There's a dead bird on the friggin' film. Look at that. What a place to leave a dead bird. Well, rest in pieces, Tweety. Safe journey. All right, so that's kind of weird. Got a dead bird on top of the phone. All right, World War III update. Well, I'm out here at the end of St. Joseph Street at my pro-cam driving school, and I just took the bus here. And I'm very vexed today because the bus was too efficient. It normally takes like an hour and something to get down here. And yeah, no, I got down here. I got like 3 hours to kill now. I was like, what? What up with that? You know? All right, World War III update. Again, I have no idea why or how people could pay attention to like Dancing with the Stars and crazy, stupid stuff like that. Nothing against the show personally, but you know, there's so much more interesting stuff going on the planet. You know, kind of like scary, interesting, but amusing nonetheless. And it looks like, was it 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, we had Russian Su-30s, pretty much 6 of them kind of chased away 4 Israeli F-15s. Okay, we know about that. And basically the F-15 pilots and their ground control guys did a quick kind of assessment and said we'd lose airplanes if we push this a little bit too far, right? So they turned around, and that was the end of it. Well, looks like from the making of this video, maybe about a night, maybe about 2 nights ago, over Lebanon, which Lebanon, remember, they're in on this fight too. I mean, you got pretty much half the planet is in on this fight in Syria. And what's ended up happening is that over Lebanese airspace, a bunch of Israeli airplanes once again were flying in, I guess under the radar, supposedly, when they were detected once again by Russian Su-30s. And I believe they were Russian Su-30s, from what the story went. And they signaled the Israelis, told them you're entering airspace that's restricted to you, and if you come any closer, it will warrant basically us shooting you down. And yeah, that is. When have you ever heard of pilots telling the Israeli pilots, piss off or we're going to shoot you down? That is bold. I mean, again, those Israeli boys can fly. Most of the American pilots, the doctrine that they learned in their F-15s, you know, a lot of those manuals that were written in blood were written in Israel, you know, through all the years of conflict. Those Israeli boys really learned how to fly. So what does that tell you? And once again, obviously the Israelis made the right decision and turned around. Why? Because again, I'm not saying the Russians would clean their clocks, but I'm saying there'd probably, if there was, what you call it, 4 Israeli F-15s and 6 Russian Su-30s, there'd probably be 10 destroyed airplanes. I mean, both sides have good pilots. I know you get a lot of pilot bashing, and well, like even guys like Joe Skousen say, well, the Russian pilots that they send into Syria they're not their top of the line pilots. But I take issue with that. Now, I get it, Joe Skousen being an ex, I believe he's ex-Navy pilot. He might have been ex-Air Force, whatever. So yeah, he knows how to fly and stuff like that. Yes, I would agree with him. The guys flying the Frogfoots and maybe the Su-24s are probably in middle-rank pilots. But the guys flying the Su-30s, again, this is the best Russia has. You know, Su-35, Su-30, Su-34, these are their state-of-the-art airplanes. These are their frontline super fighters and technically strike bombers of the Su-34. So they're not going to get a guy right out of flight school throwing him into one of these and going into combat. It takes a long time through the Russian Air Force to rank your way up to that. It's hard enough just to get into a MiG-29, let alone an Su-30. An Su-30 is pilot extraordinary. I can't see any Russian pilot flying in an Su-30 in a combat scenario with less than 3,000 hours of flying time. I mean, a lot of their pilots have 15, 20 hours of flying, 20,000 hours of flying time. I mean, these guys they're old and gray. They're grayer than me. You know, they've been flying since the 70s. You know, like these guys, they know how to fly. And if you look, gotta watch out, got shithawks up there. These guys got pinpoint accuracy if you get right underneath them. You gotta watch where they're strategizing for a bomb run at the top of my head. I can hear them giggling, going, I bet you I could get them on the shiny spot. But anyway, yeah, so, remember what I was saying about, you know, Putin calling the bluff of NATO? Here's something interesting. Look at that shipping container. It's got like Israeli style stars on it. That's kind of funny. And again, I have nothing against the Israeli people, but what I said was that at some point Putin's going to call NATO's bluff. I do believe the airstrike we saw, or the shipping missile, cruise missile that we saw, that is so significant. I know a lot of people might be playing it down, say, well, it's not that big of a deal, you know, our military can do it. Yes, but that's not the point. The point isn't how good is all the NATO forces. The point is that the Russians are showing that we're just as good, you know. Bit of an industrial area. I drive around in this area too, so I'm just going to go through the roundabout. I'm trying to go somewhere where I'm not going to get squished by a car while I'm blogging. So, but anyway, yeah. So like the Israelis, this is 2 incursions. Now we got to look at the events that led up to this. Okay, first event, starting from the launch from the Caspian Sea. Well, that's pretty much put NATO on notice. That is a, hey, look at us, world. We can, if you really want to push it, we can, you know, we can fight back. And you have to understand, this also comes at a time. This second Israeli excursion also comes at an oddball time, right after Putin and Obama met at the United Nations. This kind of goes back to why I said there's like no good guys, and I know there's a lot of people that are out there, you know, accusing me of being like a Russian agent. No, I'm not a Russian agent. No, I'm not a Russian propagandist. But I'll also tell you, I'm just telling you what's going on in the world. But you've also heard me say they're in it for themselves. They are not in it for the Syrian people. There you go. I'm just gonna goodbye. People look at people weird when they're talking to their camera. But anyway, so the Russians are there for their own interest. I've said that right from day one. The byproduct just happens to be that they're doing the right thing, i.e. killing terrorists, ISIS fighters, but they're also in there doing their own thing. So what is it that they're doing there? Well, according to a meeting, there was a guy, you can check out, I don't check him out very often, but he actually has really good information all the time, is the Caspian Sea report. Now, he might be a little bit, I don't know if he's anti or pro-Russian or what side he's on, but he does tend to talk about a lot of events, dates, times, and stuff like that. And what he was saying was, the deal, and this kind of explains along the many multiple agendas that I was talking about of Syria in itself, that one of the reasons the Russians are in Syria, remember, the Syrian uprising started at the same time as the Ukraine uprising. Notice Ukraine's been a little bit quieter in the news. Well, here's what's going on there. The Russians said to the Americans, basically, if you give us Ukraine, okay, and drop the sanctions on Russia, we'll give you Assad. You know, so again, the Syrian people are just the monkeys in the middle. Again, the poor bastards caught between the crossfire are basically superpowers. That's what it's about, right? The Americans said no. So Obama basically said no. I don't know how the Congress feels about that, but that's probably why he said no. Again, Obama's really a puppet. You know, he's controlled opposition. If you can't figure that out by this point, I don't know what to tell you. So he looks like he's doing the right thing by saying no, but really no, that's not the deal. The deal is the bankers, George Soros, groups that I think Russia's kicked out something like 7 George Soros funded democracy groups or whatever out of Russia. So right now, this is a war that's fallen on a level that most of us, even guys like me who kind of pay attention, I can imagine the stuff I just don't know. Imagine the stuff that we're not allowed to find out. But basically, long short of it is, Russia wants Ukraine, they want it back, the bankers can't have it, and if they can't have it, nobody can. That's what the Russians are playing in Syria. That's why they've waited so long to jump in. Another, Paul Craig Roberts was saying, the Russians were going to let it get really bad to the point where when they go in, they're going to look like the world savior. And right now, you got to say, most people are sitting there saying, well, the United States is saying, bad Russia, because airstrikes won't solve anything, it'll make matters worse. Meanwhile, the NATO and all these coalition forces have been bombing for the past 2 years in Syria, saying that those airstrikes are good, but the Russian ones are bad. Meanwhile, the Russian ones have nearly, like I said months ago, I said when Russia gets in there, they're going to start at one end of the country, and they're just going to freaking carpet bomb the whole thing, just sweep the whole thing, and they're doing it. They are killing a lot of freaking people there. These airstrikes, and particularly those TOS Bursino, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, T-72 rocket launchers, which are known as a flamethrower, firing those 24 thermobaric rockets, which take out 8 city blocks at a time. Well, guess what happens? In 8 city blocks, okay, yeah, you're probably going to kill every terrorist there, and everybody around those terrorists. Again, they're just leveling the place. It's complete genocide. But that said, that's probably why you see such a flight of Syrians. Never mind the economic refugees coming out of, or the economic migrants coming out, doubling back as refugees into Europe. Basically what it is yeah, the Syrians 81% of them said, yeah, the ISIS guys are basically a U.S. proxy army to overthrow Assad. That's what they are. That said, again, how many CIA guys, how many Blackwater guys, how many Mossad guys have been killed in the past 3 weeks? Just imagine the spy vs. spy knocking off that we don't even know about. And apparently, yes, Mossad agents are being found dead amongst the jihadis because they've openly been training these guys. They just call them Free Syrian Army or whatever the new army, coalition army, whatever it is now. They got a couple of different nicknames for them. The point is that, yeah, the jig's up. You know, the emperor has no clothes. People know that ISIS is the jihad army for, you know, Israel and the United States. So what's Israel's stake in this? Well, Israel's stake in this is the same as the bankers, you know, the Anglo-American Empire versus the Eurasian Pacific Empire. It's those two empires fighting. The world is split in two, like I've always said. You hear Lyndon LaRouche talk about this, you know, Anglo-American Empire banking system versus, you know, China, Russia, BRICS, which I keep saying Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Singapore, but it's South Africa, sorry. My correction, my bad. Thank you, people, for correcting me on that, because every time I get something wrong in a video, I'd say 90% of my comments I get in, well, not 90%, but I'd say a good 10% of comments I get in is people correcting me. Now, and I encourage that, I do, because I want to be as accurate as possible. But anyway, that banking system is still clashing heads with the Rothschild Federal Reserve IMF banking system. So what's Syria's taken it? Well, they're basically, the Rothschilds are the ones in 1948 that funded Israel. It's the same bank. It's one unit. The media is one unit. The banks are one unit. The education system is one unit in each side of the world, right? And these two empires, made up of multiple different nations, are the ones fighting. And what are they fighting over? That's a great question. Well, golden rule. Ye who has the gold rules. Israel discovered a whole bunch of oil underneath the Golan Heights, an obscene amount of oil there. Problem is, it can be drilled from both the Israeli side and the Syrian side. So there's a little bit of a motive there to protect the Golan Heights. It's not only a defendable position for Israel, well, questionably defendable depending on the army going up against it. Against Russian air power, the Golan Heights mean nothing. Against Russian artillery, the Golan Heights mean nothing. Against older Syrian tanks, yes, it's defendable. Against older Lebanese tanks and artillery, it's defendable. Against Hezbollah with their brand new T-72s and T-63s that they're getting, and probably some old T-55s. Yes, it's defendable in that place. But it's not defendable against RPG-30s and maybe RPG-7s, but RPG-30s and Vicar missiles and Igla, anti-aircraft missiles, stuff like that. Those anti-tank weapons, no, it's not defendable from that because, like strafing helicopters, you get some Black Shark helicopters or Hawkem Werewolf Black Shark, which is all kind of the same breed of helicopter, just different stages of upgrades. Black Shark being the most advanced, or the MIL-28 Havocs in there. Which those things are there. Those things are probably the best attack helicopter Russia has for themselves. These things climb almost half a mile a minute. They're ridiculously maneuverable for such a heavy flying tank. Big 30mm gun on there, 16 on the MIL-28. You got 16 anti-tank Vicar missiles. There's really not much defense a tank's going to have against these things in large numbers, and they can fire up to 2,000 meters, which is about 6,600 feet. So a little over a mile. So yeah, that's not what the Golan Heights is about. So really it tells you the Golan Heights is a fight over, you guessed it, oil, resources. So that's one thing. The second one is Russia invested a shitload, just before the uprising in 2010, Russia was investing a shitload of money on, these gas pipelines that were going to go through Turkey, then go through, Syria, and then from Syria on through, I guess, maybe either Pakistan or Iraq, all the way to get their way through China. I don't think they've made a deal with Pakistan yet, but I can't see why they would turn this down because they're going to prosper. If they can have a direct gas lines going from Russia straight through to China, right there, Russia can almost cut Europe off if they want. If they get the upper card, they could take the loss. Why? Because they got a bigger customer on the other side and several customers in between. And that's kind of what they're doing. Gazprom is on both sides of Russia, trying to get that oil to China as much as it can. And obviously, the quickest way through is going through Syria and Turkey and all that. Turkey, I still don't know I think they're going to flip-flop out of self-preservation. Yeah, some drones have been being shot down. There's video footage of an Su-30 chasing a U.S. drone around. It's that type of stuff. Some people said that the Kurds, the Turks shot down like a remote control drone that was just like a kid's drone or something like that. You never know. I mean, picture all the gamers. There's gamers all over the world. Okay, I mean, you're telling me what some kid in Syria, okay, that not quite in the war zone, that has a drone. You're telling me he's not going to go check this stuff out just to see what the hell's going on? You know, oh, dudes, never mind Call of Duty 4. I got the real thing here. He loses his drone. He goes home to mom. Mom, the Civil War destroyed my drone. And okay, dear, I'll buy you two tomorrow. You stay away from Warzone now. You buy here. I'll drive you by here. Yeah, you know, it's like that type of thing, right? I know, people. You bastard. You're such a bastard. I know. But that's what's going on. It's a resource war. The same thing that happened in Iraq, same in Afghanistan, same thing that's happening in Ukraine. It's the same play, U.S. foreign policy play all over the time. It's the bankers want the resources. And if you look at the Ukraine, look at how devastated it is. So I say at some point, yes, the Russians get the Ukraine back, and it's going to be hell to pay. I'm still not 100% on board with Joe Skousen that the right sector's in it with the Russians. It's possible because think about it. Every time these guys gain ground, they give it up. You know, there's that thing. Maybe the Ukrainian military is on the take. You never know. Maybe cross, double, triple, double. Quadruple cross. It's it's a dirty game. We don't know what's happening. All you know is a lot of innocent people getting killed in between. So maybe they're on the other side and the Russians manufactured the whole thing all along, but it would not make sense at all, because why would you destabilize a country you already have control of? Because if they wanted to say, okay, well, half the Ukraine wants to go with Europe. Okay, so half the Ukrainian people want to go with Europe, the other half, like in the Crimean, the eastern regions, want to stay with Russia. They could have just done it via referendum. You know, yeah, there'd be a little tension, but there wouldn't be a civil war. And it would be done in like 30 days. Okay, yeah, so in 30 days you got two new countries. You might even have a small conflict in between. Okay, fine. But not every single the Russians, there's no benefit for them to really do it the way that's going on. So I still don't think the Russians are in it on that. But the Russians are in Syria. This would explain why they're intervening now. It does make sense. Other analysts have kind of said this is probably what they're going to do. Again, the world is looking at, they're killing ISIS, they're doing the right job, but they're also, the United States is correct, yes, they are killing the proxy armies. The proxy armies are CIA agents mixed in, maybe not every one of them is a CIA agent. This is the thing that you gotta think of it. Okay, so you have 400 guys that are legitimate jihadists. 3 of them are CIA, 4 of them are Mossad. The 3 and 4 guys, or the 7 or 8 of them, guide the other 400. You see in the picture, that's what I'm talking about, that they're within. Because people say, no, well, you can see all kinds of footage. This is a Free Syrian Army. This guy's lived here for ever, and he's talking about rights and freedom and stuff. Yeah, that's true. Those guys are legit. I don't. But what you're missing is who's guiding them. And it's kind of funny. Everybody keeps driving around because there's like a couple of garages here. There's like the test run, and then there's also student cars. We come in here. We do like the roundel, so the big roundel. Just thought I'd show you. Nowhere you go in the city's quiet, that's for sure. But with that said, again, al-Baghdadi, again, ex-Mossad agent. Okay. The Iraqi military hits al-Baghdadi's convoy, but they didn't kill him. At first it was, yeah, they killed him. Then, no, they didn't kill him. Okay, he's disappeared. We don't know where he is. Okay, we know where he is now. He's in Turkey being treated. But again, why wouldn't they just treat him on the spot? It's nothing a 9mm or 45 ACP wouldn't have fixed. Or 7.62 by 39. They could have fixed him up right there. But no, for some reason, no, they took him to Turkey. Do you think they're going to hand him over to the authorities? I don't think so. Why? Because he's the agent. He's the Israeli agent. There's no such thing as ex-Mossad. No, there's no such thing as ex-Mossad. Unless they're dead. You know, that's the only time they get to retire. But, you know, we'll have to see how that one plays out. But I can imagine, like, why isn't anybody on the mainstream media and the news saying, oh, yeah, we got the bastard. Leader of ISIS. Yeah, there we go. Not a word. Not a word. Nobody talking about it. CNN? Non-news. Non-news. Kim Kardashian's one butt cheek's bigger than the other, and her boyfriend, whatever his name is, got a new gold tooth implant. Worldwide news. 24-hour coverage. Russia nearly destroys ISIS, completely wipes them out in 3 weeks. Non-news. Back page story, you'd be lucky if it makes the back page, page 6 or whatever the slogan goes. You'd be lucky if it makes page 6. See the propaganda for what it is, That said, again, some people say, oh, dude, you're too pro-Putin. I'm not pro-Putin. I mean, the guy's a criminal. I mean, when you're firing thermobaric rockets indiscriminately into a nation's whether they invited you in or not, I mean, this isn't strategic striking. This is, if they're there, kill them all. You know, they're just killing them all. That's what they're doing. You know, it's like, because the only thing they care about is killing the proxy groups. Now, the benefit is to Assad. The benefit will be to the Syrian people for the most part, because they get rid of the ISIS guys. And the benefit will be to the rest of the world, because that's less ISIS guys that's going to be, out going back into the rest of the world. Again, you have to understand, the past 2 years of NATO airstrikes was to keep the jihadis fighting in Syria. It was cattle rustling. It's jihadist cattle rustling. The Russians are trying to chase them out of Syria. The NATO is trying to chase them back into Syria. Again, they want to overthrow Assad. Why? The resources, and for Israel to attack Iran, they got to get Assad out of the way. Assad was about to fall almost 3 weeks ago. Russians came in. You know, and the worst thing is, it's all legal, because yes, the UN Security Council said this, Russia has the go-ahead to do this. Assad invited them in. That's the only people that are invited into Syria to go fight ISIS is Lebanon with Hezbollah, Iran with Hezbollah, Russia, and obviously the Syrian armies, welcome there. These are the only guys that have legal congressional go-ahead to do this. Everybody else is in there illegally. Just kind of saying, again, it's not about whether they're good guys or bad guys. Again, everybody's in there for their own interest. And I think what the Israelis are trying to do, because if their guys are getting slaughtered on the ground by Russian air power, they're probably trying to get in there and give them a fighting chance to get them out of there with the air power. Maybe do a couple of strikes to clear a path, take out some tanks, take out whatever it is they need to take out to get their guys out of there. But the thing is you have to understand, the Syrian army has had tons of agents within all these jihadi groups. They know where everybody is. That's why nothing's going to get in, nothing's going to get out unless they want it. Now, there's a lot of jihadis being hurtled towards Iran, but I think Iran can deal with them. And now, and also in Jordan, I think there was another few hundred fleeing across the border there. So all those countries where they were trained up, again, these jihadis are basically mercenaries. When they don't get paid, they're going to start ripping the place apart too. So I think this is where Turkey becomes the flip-flop, is because if the Americans keep dropping, and they're doing another airdrop, I don't know when the date for it is, but they're going to be doing another 50 tons of munitions to the Kurds again. The Turks are looking at it and say, whoa, hey, slow down, don't be harming those guys. They don't like us. So yes, they might help you get rid of Assad, but they're going to kill us, and yeah, we're arming the people we're going to have to fight in the future. So I don't know exactly how the Turks are going to play out on this. At some point, self-preservation. They're right on border with Russia. Their livelihood is going to be better if they side with the Russians. Why? Gas pipelines. Sure, they've got Aragon's a U.S. puppet, but I mean, he's definitely not a good guy. He doesn't even like his own people. Bad guys. All these guys are bad. All of them need to go to jail. Round them all up. Put them all in jail. But let Russia finish the job first, because I'd rather their citizens pay the tax bill for that than us, right? Plus, you got to also look at it too. The Syrian war is the biggest live fire exercise. This is a bonus for Russia. They're getting to test out all their new weapons. They know they work for sure now. That's got to be a morale booster for their military. It's not, okay, we're going to do tests and see how it works, and here's the safety margins of where we can fire the missile under this control. No, these are this is live fire, baby. We're going to see if this thing works or not. We're going to know for sure. 26 cruise missiles come in, 26 cruise missile arguably hit their targets. And even if it was only 24 and 2 went down, it's still 24 cruise missiles that were almost were unstoppable. You can't overlook those numbers. You can't overlook those numbers. If that was the furthest range missiles that the Russians had, and these are not nuclear, these are just your regular cruise missiles. If that was just the furthest ones they had, 1,500 kilometers or 900 mile range, that's terrifying enough. Particularly, I mean, just the destructions of 4 warships, are making look, the Australian Navy saying, okay, well, maybe, we know the Russians and the Chinese have similar technology. Maybe we better not go patrolling through the 12-mile border coastal limit of China. And the United States is in there provoking China, basically, sending their Navy right into their disputed waters, right? So you got Japan and China, Japan and the United States out there, in those waters. Again, could something possibly go wrong? Yes. Why? You're getting too damn close to each other. It's not a matter of who's good guy, who's bad guy here. It's a matter of when the shooting starts, we're all screwed. And again, you think these guys are going to win? No one's going to win. A lot of people are going to die. No one wins. No one wins in this. I can't stress that enough. You know, people of the world have to understand. Governments around the world have alienated the people. They don't serve the people. They serve the bankers. They serve their masters, their puppet masters. Most of them are openly admitted. On the Anglo-American side, it's pretty easy to find them. Start with George Soros, Henry Kissinger, work your way down. Rothschilds, work your way down. Rockefellers, work your way down. And everything they own pretty much falls into the same play. On the other side, you might have to dig a little more. You have to look at who the Russian oligarchs are. You'll have to look at who the Chinese dynasty you guys are. You know, you'll have to look at that stuff. But they all need to go. They're all bad. They're going to get us all killed. But this is, I say, the step when the Russians are at the point, okay, where they're threatening Israeli pilots. Not once. First time was a warning, you're entering airspace. Second time, you cross this line, you die. That's a big escalation. That's a huge escalation. On top of, hey, NATO, look at what we can do from the Caspian Sea. That is impressive. It's not that they struck their targets. It's the routes were, I mean, these cruise missiles were going through valleys. They weren't flying in a straight line. They were flying all over the place, undetected. You know, nobody would have known about these things until after. The drone shot down, there was a U.S. drone, obviously a Predator drone. You could just tell by the wreckage it was a Predator drone. Whose Predator drone? Maybe it was a Turkish one, maybe it was a NATO one, maybe it was a U.S. one. But there was one, I didn't see the call sign on it, or the, the stars and stripes on it, the little emblem on there to see exactly which nation it came from. Most likely a NATO one, joint effort, you know. Most likely, or Turkish would be my best guess, because I know they kind of have those things there too. But again, these things, they're trying to see what the Russians are doing. The Russians pretty much have, I wouldn't say everybody blinded there, but the real time, think about that. The Russians keep chasing these NATO and U.S. drones away. That is a severe debilitation for the guys on the ground waiting for satellites to fly over to make a move. It's just like, okay, well, we don't know where the Russians are. We can't move our guys until the Russians we're clear, you know, there's hawks in the air. You know what I mean? You know, these guys are like mice on the ground. They're going to get scooped up. And the Russians know exactly what time the satellites are flying over. Coordinate with that. Say, well, these guys are going to move when they can see where they're going. We just have to figure out where they're looking. Yeah, it's a high-tech game here. You know, you're overestimating the Russian abilities. No, I still say yes, NATO has the technological advantage in a lot of areas. There's no doubt about that. And in satellite technology, yes, the U.S. has superior satellite technology. But the Russian stuff is good enough. But the thing is it's not even really a question of that. It's the question that they've got airplanes in the air over the targets they need to hit. They just got to wait for them to move. And with the ground force, I mean, you're talking a big ground force sweep that's going on. That how do you move around Syria without getting killed? Be very, very difficult, even with that limited amount of airplanes. Now, China, I know they've said they're going to jump in on this one too, but I haven't seen anything from them yet. But I guess they're itching to see how effective their weapons are too. And we're going to have to keep an eye on that, because that can tell us a lot about the upcoming war. And I'm thinking this is probably why Australia told the U.S. saying, no, we're going to sit that naval, that naval drill out in the Chinese waters, because we're doing trade with them. They're our biggest trade partner, and we really don't want to get caught up, between a dispute between two superpowers. When the Australian government comes out and says that kind of puts they're telling you, look, if you guys want to go toe-to-toe with the Russians or the Chinese, that's up to you. That's on you. I think NATO falls apart if the United States starts war or Japan starts war with the Chinese. I think NATO, people say, well, you guys fucking kick them in the nuts. You deal with it. You know, that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen in Europe. Guarantee people say, we're at war with the Russians because we went and kicked them in the nuts. No way, no way. That's what the Putin wildman, he hasn't done it yet, but he's working up to it. Again, this time last year, we weren't talking about this intense of a situation. It is scary. It is holding off World War III. Don't kid yourself. This is the ultimate FU trump card for the Russians, and the Russians still have the NATO or the UN trump card too on Iran. So Iran is getting kind of bold with showing off their rockets and everything like that, letting Israel know that yeah, you just try to strike us like you said. Again, I'm not taking sides here, but the best thing the Israelis could do is nothing. Protect their borders, fine. I mean, it's different if you have Su-30s flying into Israel. They're not flying into Israel. They're over Lebanese airspace. The Lebanese want them there. You know, maybe not every Lebanese person. Again, never mind the man on the ground. It's not about the people. None of the people around the world want this. It's the elite, world elites that want this. But the question is how you play this game you win big, you lose big. That 50-50 win big, lose big. Again, if the Russians win on this, they get the Ukraine, Assad gets saved, ISIS gets destroyed, it kills off the Anglo-American Empire a bit, and it's a huge win for them. They lose World War III and everybody dies. So it's a win big, lose big. But they haven't done the trump card yet, the full trump card. These are just kind of, we know what they're going to do next. And yes, U.S. Airplanes did do a strike in Syria. They hit a power station. They didn't hit any terrorists. They just hit a power station. Okay, so that's going to hurt. I'm sure the Syrian people are appreciating that. I'm sure they're really appreciating that. Yeah, so yeah, way to go. Way to go. Why would you do that? If you're there to kill jihadists, kill the jihadists, right? But they're not. It's again, I got to feel bad for the U.S. pilots that have to fly these missions, and was like, well, we know the Russians just hit a shitload of them over there. They ran out of ammo. Let's go help them. Let's go wipe these bastards out. So I want to be home for Christmas to see my little kids. But no. We'll go hit a power station that's just going to put the lights out for the people that need the power the most. Again, make the people suffer, right? So, I don't know what else you can say on that one. I mean, and you are hearing of, rumblings in the Navy pilots about stuff like that, but we'll have to see. I don't think you'll ever see a defection on the Navy pilots. The only place I think you'll ever see defection is going to be in probably the U.S. Army or the National Guard. I think that's where you'd see the dissidents. Again, at some point, yes, there is going to be a U.S. military coup in the United States. If you can't see it coming, I don't know what to tell you. We're in that time. We've got a griffin. A griffin, yeah. Usually it's a Chinook flying around. But we've got a griffin. Now that's not out of ordinary here around Ottawa and stuff like that. They train out of here. That's the Canadian Air Force there, or Army, I guess, is the helicopter. So that's basically like a Bell Huey, but we call it the Griffin, and it's a little more horsepower, jet-powered engines there. They're nice. I've been in them. I've never been flying in them, but I used to play around with one in the museum. There it is again. It's way over there somewhere. But anyway, yeah, so again, we'll have to wait. And again, for those of you, again, I know I got a lot of American viewers and stuff. I'm not against the American people. I'm definitely not against the soldiers. What I'm saying is a lot of our soldiers are going to get killed for nothing. And Canadian soldiers, to my fellow Canadian soldiers and peoples, with the new government, here's what's coming down the pipe. Yes, the airstrikes, Canadian CF-18s will be returning home at some point. I don't know when that mission will end. I guess as soon as, who's going to call Pierre Elliott Trudeau? Justin Trudeau has already said that he's going to basically bring, the airstrikes are no good, they're not doing anything, so he's going to bring the airplanes home, which, okay, I agree with that. Yeah, we shouldn't be there in the first place. It's a sham. I don't want the RCAF to be ISIS's and Al-Qaeda's Air Force either. And we have no interest there. We have absolutely no interest there. There's no reason for this to be there. But there's a problem. He's going to leave the training guys there. He's going to leave the Canadian forces on the ground training the Kurds, which you say, okay, well, what's wrong with that? They've got no air cover now. It's all or none. Either you bring the boys home, all of them, or you support them with everything they need. It's one or the other. I don't agree with us being over there, but I don't like my fellow Canadians being in harm's way because of political correctness. They're going to take away the best thing, I mean, they shouldn't, if he was to say, okay, well, we're going to bring the airplanes home, we'll send in a few gunship Griffins, because those are the go-to guys. If you want to see waist gunners in action, the guys that fly those Griffins, you got a Dillon minigun on one side, you got a 50 cal on the other. These guys come in 90 miles an hour, 4 feet off the deck. They're terror of the skies, those guys, in those old Griffins. Those boys can fly. I'll say those boys can fly. Very impressive. And, okay, fine, bring home the CF-18s, but you better be sending 20 Leopards there. I mean, the largest carnivorous land beast predator in Canada, the Leopard tank, send those there. That'll back our guys up. In fact, let the guys back up the tanks. That would work a lot better, But then you're getting into a bit of a mission overcreep. But you could just hold them off on the border, You could send in a couple of labs if you wanted to kind of, with the coyotes just for surveillance if they don't have them there. Again, it doesn't make sense to have air power there without forward observers on the ground. Well, they got the guys on the ground, but I don't know if they have things like the coyote. You need armor there. So you can't just send the air, the jets and no armor. These guys need to be protected. If you're going to send them in, you got to send them in with what they need. It's not about the numbers. It's about the tools. They need the right tools. You need a Coyote there with the 25mm main gun, kind of dig it in the ground a bit, get the mast up. That thing can detect, it has a camera on it. It's great surveillance. It can, okay, there's jihadis over there. They're sneaking up they're over there. They'd be in a place like this. You won't see the vehicle, but the mast could be up and keep a 3 or 4 kilometer clear, clear surveillance view. That's what you need. And then 109 beside that. You get your Leopard tank for, for when it gets hungry. Oh, there's jihadists over there. Yeah, go track beast. Go track beast. And then right behind them, get your special forces guys. Protect the tank. That's the way you do it. And if you need air power, okay, well, fine. Then you'd have your CF-18 up there. But we'd be better with attack helicopters in there than that kind of air power. But 2 CF-18s and a couple of Apaches with Leopard tanks, backed up by howitzers, backed up by the guys on the ground, and a sweeping motion of the go-to guys. That'd work. That'd work. You could still keep the same amount of personnel there. But because I don't really like the idea that we're there to overthrow Assad and not get rid of ISIS, it's kind of one of those things we shouldn't be in there in the first place. But if we're going to keep our guys there, they've got to be protected. And that's the same on the U.S. side. That's the same on the Russian side. It's the same on the Syrian side. It goes the same. If the guys are going to be protected, the only guys that shouldn't be protected there is the ones that the U.S. forces are protecting. ISIS. They should not be protected. Oh, no, they're rebel groups. ISIS doesn't exist anymore. They're now called... the silliness. But anyway, I know it makes some people mad when I talk about stuff like that, but that's what's going on in the world, and you have to call it out the way you see it. Yeah, so the Russians, they're in there, they're bombing the shit, but they really are hitting everything that's there. They are killing anything that's in the way. If it's against Assad's forces, which ISIS are, they're killing them. But the priority is to kill the supply line to ISIS, and that's the CIA, the Mossad, the Turkish guys, their forces. I mean, there's probably 1,000 jihadi groups in there mixed in with, about probably 20 different nations of people supporting these jihadists. Saudi Arabia. I mean, heck, that's where the terrorism's coming from. Why aren't we attacking Saudi Arabia? You know what I mean? Assad's such a terrorist. And again, Assad's not a good guy, but I do agree that the only people that can get rid of Assad should be the people. And the Free Syrian Army might have been those people. And they probably would have still have support up until they started handing the weapons over to ISIS, which in that case, no. But again, why are we there in the first place? Just my take on it. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So, nice little roundel here. We're in the middle of an industrial area. Got a crow up there. Horrible sounding bird ever. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But I will leave on one final note. When Putin plays the crazy man, the world is going to notice it. People notice the warships. That's the escalation up to the crazy man. Crazy man meaning like pulling it like a Kim Jong-un, just, sporadically just start shelling the south and stuff like that, like they do a couple of times a year. Your loudspeaker, your stereo is too loud. We're going to fire artillery at it. And you get a couple of days of North Korea, South Korea firing, artillery at each other, trying to knock out each other's stereos. Kind of funny. Funny and tragedy at the same time. But when Putin does play the wild man card, just think about that. If the other day, if those Israeli pilots would have pushed the envelope there and kept coming in, what happens when the Russians shoot down an Israeli airplane? What happens? Are we on the brink at that point? For a couple of handful of Israeli pilots? That is a freaking black swan event. Look, Cuba jumping in on this deal. I didn't see that one coming. Like, I know Cuba is going to be on the Russian side, but I didn't expect them to actually send guys in to train up the Syrian tank forces. But, again, where's this game going to get? So when Putin decides to play the crazy man, I still say it comes in the form of a thermonuclear weapon detonation test. That's something really big, something knockout power, just that the world's going to, the shockwave is going to be felt around the world. It'll be like Tsar or Tsar Bomb 2, like a 200 megaton bomb, just to see what it does. We know what it's going to do, but EMP half of Europe and say, oops, that was bad, we're so sorry. But see how big it was? Really don't want to piss us off. That's what they're going to do. They're going to have to do that. And after that, brace for impact, because if NATO hasn't backed down by that time, which I don't think NATO in itself will back down. The Anglo-American Empire will not back down because they're psychopaths. They want the Ukraine, they want the Middle East under their control. Control the dollar. It's a petrodollar thing, and if you understand the petrodollar, you understand what the wars are. Oil and money. Oil, money, and power. That's But it's now you just add in a few extra resources: oil, money, power, titanium, opium, whatever else. All those things. That's what it's about. It's controlling the resources. So it's basically a violent game of Monopoly. And when the Russians do this, they are going to do it. I don't know when they're going to do it, but when they do this, the world's going to take notice. I mean, I think the Caspian Sea cruise missile launch was stage 1. I don't know how many stages there's going to be to it. But if they shoot down and start swatting Israeli pilots, that's one thing. That's something. I have no idea what the response. What's Israel going to do on that? That's them being put on notice. Because again, the Israeli, and I heard somebody wrote this to me. They're like, yeah, but dude, the Israelis have all this and that and the other thing in their country. That's true, but Russia can bring in more. Israel, again, the Russians don't even have to fly in airplanes to do this. They can just launch cruise missiles from the Caspian Sea forever and a day. I mean, they've got enough stock. They could, okay, well, we'll just launch 40,000 cruise missiles, and we'll just make it a 3-week skeet shooting fiesta. The Israelis, they're not going to go toe-to-toe with the Russians. They're not suicidal. And the thing is will the world come to the rescue of Israel? Yes, the NATO will be put on notice. They will be told they have to go die for the Israelis. And yes, under the Samson option, U.S. soldiers are allowed to be killed at 33-1. For every one Israeli, they're allowed to kill 33 Americans. That's an acceptable loss, so that means they'll be willing to kill 300 Americans per one Israeli to defend Israel. But even Israel is not defendable. Not against a superpower. It's not defendable. I know about the 73 war, the 60 war, the 6-day war, the 67 war. Yes, impressive pilots flying, all that. But look at what they were against. They were against equipment that was similar, but way less advanced than what both sides have today. The Israelis have advanced stuff. I'm not saying to be a walk in the park. Again, to attack Israel is a death sentence for any nation around it. But there's a difference between, Syria, Iran. Even Iran can wipe Israel off the map without even flying a jet. All they have to do is send, airliners, one of the 1,200 known rockets that they have with the 1,200-mile range. They probably have even more than that now, knowing that, that at some point, yes, they are going to go toe-to-toe with the Israelis. So their strategy is simple. Launch rockets at anything that, even if they get, it's not so much we're going to win, it's we're taking you with us, is the strategy that the Iranians are going with. So we're going to die, but we're taking you with us. So you can attack if you want, but you're going to die. And Iran hasn't attacked anybody in 200 years. They're not going to attack anybody. The best thing for Israel to do is nothing. They've lost their guys, cut the losses in Syria. That's their best option right now. If they can get a few of them out, good luck to that. But those guys and those Mossad agents that are in Syria, they're on their own until they can make it to the Israeli border. That's just hope the Hawks don't get them. That's it. The Blackwater guys, same thing. They're on their own until they can get to the Israeli border, or Turkish border, or wherever else. I mean, you got to understand too. A lot of these undercover guys, if they run towards the Turkish border, they're going to get killed by the Kurds because they're not going to know who's who. I mean, heck, the Kurds shot our guys, and we're training them. That really pisses me off. That really, really pissed me off. It's like, 2 weeks there, we lose a guy. What kind of fucktard shoots his own men? You know what I mean? Like, geez. I'd like to say, Mr. Trudeau, yes, in Canada, better is possible. Let's start with getting our guys home so we can make them better. Just we'll focus on Canada. Screw the world. But I don't think it's going to work like that. But at least one thing I'll say is I know our economy is about to take a massive swan dive under the. God knows what they're going to cut. We know the Liberals cut the military, so that's. But yet they still have no problem sending these poor bastards into harm's way. That's why Canadian soldiers are usually so renowned around the world, because they can do so much with so little, because they keep fucking taking the stuff away from them. Stop it. If you don't want them to have the stuff, don't send them into harm's way. Jeez. Yeah. It's like, people, don't you understand? I guess I'm going to have to wrap this one up. But yeah, that's what we're at. We'll have to keep an eye on this. This is getting pretty tense. The Russians aren't stopping for shit. It doesn't matter if you like them or dislike them. I'm not on anybody's side here. Again, it's 99% of people on this planet want peace. 1% wants war. We're going to war. I say yes. Pray for peace and prepare your hands for war, like it says in the Bible, but or along that lines. I agree with that. But don't go looking for it. And right now, we've got all these government's looking for it. But the thing is the Russians, you know, again, their interest is they're done this job as soon as the Ukraine gets handed back over to Russia. That's their interest. That's their interest. Now, mind you, I think it might not be that cut and dry, because remember, the Russians want to make the Russians are probably looking at this as the U.S. owes us lost investment in Syria, because we started investing in Syria and they started those gas pipelines in Turkey, and now those things got cut off. We're going to kill your guys. It's dirty. I'm telling you, it's dirty. So that's what the Russians, the deal with. You drop the sanctions, and I think European countries will drop sanctions. I'm not going to say my country's going to be the first to do it, but I have a hunch Trudeau's going to do that. He's going to say, we're going to work with the Russians, and because he's politically correct, he's going to do this. Remember, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was a supporter of Mao Zedong. Yes, he admired the man greatly. Yeah, so I don't think the apple fell very far from the tree on that one. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I know what the CNN, they're going to be trash talking Canada left, right, and center if we drop sanctions on Russia. Now, mind you, it'll benefit Canada. Why? Because we lost on these sanctions so that we can support jihadis in Syria and neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. Not all of them are neo-Nazis, I know that, but you guys know where I stand on that issue. We lost $400 and some odd million to our farmers here. Yeah, I think it's going to be a win at home if he opens up that business again. And it's cheaper for us if we're not involved in the Ukraine. But again, I don't know what's going to happen there. We'll have to wait and see. I have nothing against the Ukrainian people, but it's not our fight. We're not in on this one. None of these countries that we go and intervene in are ever going to come to our aid for anything. I do believe his slogan. I do like the slogan too. In Canada, better is always possible. But we got to start focusing on Canada. Get out of this geopolitical Rothschild banking stuff. Restore the Bank of Canada. You know, resound NAFTA. Don't sign the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. I have a feeling the new boss is going to be the same as the old boss. Yeah, Trudeau's going to sign it. He's just going to read it first. Yeah, that's the only difference. That's the only difference. But anyway, I'm babbling now, so hopefully it's not going to get too much scarier than this. But these are scary movements. These are things to definitely watch for, because again, just use your own mind on it. It's not a matter of who wins and who loses. Don't look at World War III as who's going to win. Nobody's going to win. World War II, 400 million people died. 700 million died in the battle. Okay, 700 million or so died or 70 million died in the battle. Okay, 400 million people died. That means 330 million people starved to death. This is in World War II era technology. Nobody won back then. We're now talking globalization. The average person in World War II was a farm boy, meaning you have 4 sons, you can keep 1. You send the other 3. The son at home, he's growing enough food. Government gives him a little grant, grow a little extra food for the troops. Fine. Guy down the road, he's doing the same. Guy down the road, he's doing the same. They're growing their own food. They're off the grid pretty much. And a lot of people in Canada here didn't have power until like in the 1950s or 60s and 70s. There's a lot of people that still lived without power. I mean, heck, I lived without power for about 3 years of my life, in the house I live in now. We lived the old-fashioned way. It was, we got a wood stove, we got a well. I enjoyed it. It was good. People aren't resilient like that anymore. You, self-included. I mean, I hunt at the supermarket like everybody else. That's the difference. So if 400 million people die in World War II with the weaponry, most of them in Europe from starvation and disease and whatever have you, what is the modern equivalent of almost everybody who is dependent on supermarkets? 3 weeks without power, and a breakdown of medication and stuff for people, the amount of death. I mean, this could also come on the back of an economic collapse too, but there's going to be no winner. So never think about it in terms of, well, our guys can beat their guys. Our jets are better than their jets. Our pilots better than their pilots. Our ships are better than their... You're looking at it the wrong way. It's not who wins, it's how many of us are going to lose. That's the way you got to look at it. I'm not for any of this stuff. Never was, never will be. But it's the world we live in, and it's good to stay informed of what is actually going on. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Links down below. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourselves. Be true to others. check out my WW3 Updates Facebook page. You can go there and post links on all these geopolitical crazy things that are going on. Thank you so much to everybody who does. But share it for everybody, because sometimes I miss this stuff for a little bit. And, you know, the idea is this is not just my channel. This is your channel, too. It's connecting those dots, getting all that information there. It's a group effort here. So, you know, share it, right? Next to that, on Twitter, it's just not reg me, and you can basically what you call it? I just put the video there. I don't tweet or anything, but you can share it there too if you'd like. The more places you share it, the more people can be informed. The world it's always been an interesting place, but don't live in fear of it. But I mean, you know, you got to do the things you got to do, live your life or whatever. But you know, like, don't dwell on it. But it is good to be informed on it. So that's my take on things. Not everybody's going to agree with me. I get it, but there we go. So anyway, be true to yourselves, be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. Little airplane up in the sky. There you go. There's a dead bird on the freaking phone. Look at that. What a place to leave a dead bird. Well, rest in pieces, Tweety. Safe journey. All right. So that's kind of weird. Got a dead bird on top of the phone. All right. World War III update. Well, I'm out here at the end of St. Joseph Street at my pro-cam driving school, and I just took the bus here. And I'm very vexed today because the bus was too efficient. It normally takes like an hour and something to get down here. And yeah, no, I got down here. I got like 3 hours to kill now. I was like, what? We don't put that, you know? All right, World War III update. Again, I have no idea why or how people could pay attention to like Dancing with the Stars and crazy, stupid stuff like that. Nothing against the show personally, but, you know, there's so much more interesting stuff going on the planet. You know, kind of like scary, interesting, but amusing nonetheless. And it looks like, was it 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, we had Russian Su-30s, pretty much 6 of them kind of chased away 4 Israeli F-15s. Okay, we know about that. And basically the F-15 pilots and their ground control guys did a quick kind of assessment and said we'd lose airplanes if we push this a little bit too far, right? So they turned around, and that was the end of it. Well, it looks like, from the making of this video, maybe about a night, maybe about 2 nights ago, over Lebanon, which Lebanon, remember, they're in on this fight too. I mean, you got pretty much half the planet is in on this fight in Syria. And what's ended up happening is that over Lebanese airspace, a bunch of Israeli airplanes once again were flying in, I guess under the radar, supposedly, when they were detected once again by Russian Su-30s. And I believe they were Russian Su-30s, from what the story went. And they signaled the Israelis, told them, you're entering airspace that's restricted to you, and if you come any closer, it will warrant basically us shooting you down. And yeah, that is. When have you ever heard of pilots telling the Israeli pilots, piss off or we're going to shoot you down? That is bold. I mean, again, those Israeli boys can fly. Most of the American pilots, the doctrine that they learned in their F-15s, you know, a lot of those manuals that were written in blood were written in Israel, you know, through all the years of conflict. Those Israeli boys really learned how to fly. So what does that tell you? And once again, obviously the Israelis made the right decision and turned around. Why? Because again, I'm not saying the Russians would clean their clocks, but I'm saying there would probably, if there was, what you call it, 4 Israeli F-15s and 6 Russian Su-30s, there'd probably be 10 destroyed airplanes. I mean, both sides have good pilots. I know you get a lot of pilot bashing, and well, like even guys like Joe Scalzo say, well, the Russian pilots that they send into Syria they're not their top-of-the-line pilots. But I take issue with that. Now, I get it, Joe Scalzo being an ex, I believe he's ex-Navy pilot. He might have been ex-Air Force, whatever. So yeah, he knows how to fly and stuff like that. Yes, I would agree with him. The guys flying the Frogfoots and maybe the Su-24s are probably in middle-rank pilots. But the guys flying the Su-30s, again, this is the best Russia has. You know, Su-35, Su-30, Su-34, these are their state-of-the-art airplanes. These are their frontline super fighters and technically strike bombers of the Su-34. So they're not going to get a guy right out of flight school throwing them into one of these and going into combat. It takes a long time through the Russian Air Force to rank your way up to that. It's hard enough just to get into a MiG-29, let alone an Su-30. An Su-30 is pilot extraordinaire. I can't see any Russian pilot flying in an Su-30 in a combat scenario with less than 3,000 hours of flying time. I mean, a lot of their pilots have 15, 20 hours of flying, 20,000 hours of flying time. I mean, these guys they're old and gray. They're grayer than me. You know, they've been flying since the 70s. You know, like these guys, they know how to fly. And if you look, gotta watch out, got shithawks up there. These guys got pinpoint accuracy if you get right underneath them. You gotta watch where they're strategizing for a bomb run at the top of my head. I can hear them giggling, going, I bet you I could get them on the shiny spot. But anyway, yeah, so remember what I was saying about, you know, Putin calling the bluff of NATO? Here's something interesting. Look at that shipping container. It's got like Israeli style stars on it. That's kind of funny. And again, I have nothing against the Israeli people, but what I said was that at some point Putin's going to call NATO's bluff. I do believe the airstrike we saw, or the shipping missile, cruise missile that we saw, that is so significant. I know a lot of people might be playing it down and say, well, it's not that big of a deal. You know, our military can do it. Yes, but that's not the point. The point isn't how good is all the NATO forces. The point is that the Russians are showing that we're just as good. You know, bit of an industrial area. I drive around in this area too, so I'm just gonna go through the roundabout. I'm trying to go somewhere where I'm not gonna get squished by a car while I'm blogging. So, but anyway, yeah. So like the Israelis, this is 2 incursions. Now we got to look at the events that led up to this. Okay, first event. Starting from the launch from the Caspian Sea. Well, that's pretty much put NATO on notice. That is a, hey, look at us, world. We can, if you really want to push it, we can, you know, we can fight back. And you have to understand, this also comes at a time. This second Israeli excursion also comes at an oddball time, right after Putin and Obama met at the United Nations. This kind of goes back to why I said there's like no good guys, and I know there's a lot of people that are out there, you know, accusing me of being like a Russian agent. No, I'm not a Russian agent. No, I'm not a Russian propagandist. But I'll also tell you, I'm just telling you what's going on in the world. But you've also heard me say they're in it for themselves. They are not in it for the Syrian people. There we go. I'm just gonna goodbye. People look at people weird when they're talking to their camera. But anyway, so the Russians are there for their own interest. I've said that right from day one. The byproduct just happens to be that they're doing the right thing, i.e. killing terrorists, ISIS fighters, but they're also in there doing their own thing. So what is it that they're doing there? Well, according to a meeting, there was a guy, you can check out, I don't check him out very often, but he actually has really good information all the time, is the Caspian Sea report. Now, he might be a little bit, I don't know if he's anti or pro-Russian or what side he's on, but he does tend to talk about a lot of events, dates, times, and stuff like that. And what he was saying was, the deal, and this kind of explains along the many multiple agendas that I was talking about of Syria in itself, that one of the reasons the Russians are in Syria, remember, the Syrian uprising started at the same time as the Ukraine uprising. Notice Ukraine's been a little bit quieter in the news. Well, here's what's going on there. The Russians said to the Americans, basically, if you give us Ukraine, okay, and drop the sanctions on Russia, we'll give you Assad. You know?